In today's presentation, we're going to talk about some innovations. We're going to talk about some technology, but we're also going to talk about how technology is good to have, but we'll also hear from a leader, a friend of mine, who will talk about you can take the technology, but you also have to have the spirit of leadership to make those decisions. So again, welcome to today's lecture. With technology out there and with disasters, I like to find out what y'all think. What do you think is the biggest threat that is going to happen in the next 3 years? I don't see the text box here, but this is what I would like for you to do. And Tanya, could you please help me facilitate the discussion? Type in what do you think the biggest threat? It could be man-made, it could be natural. I just want to get everybody's idea. Give you about 60 seconds to do that. Donch, I see you on there. How are you doing, sir? Are you able to type in some concerns about some disasters, something that you predict is going to be pretty big that we're not ready for? I see. I can't hear you, sir, but it's okay if you can
Glad to see you again, Dennis, from classmates.
type.
And that. And then I want to say hi to the Admiral there. If
Okay.
he doesn't mind a senior chief, retired senior chief, CB. And also, I was a civilian employee at Canonsburg Naval Base working in the nuclear department, supporting yourself, sir. That's
So,
some of
Don,
my past.
so you worked in the nuclear department, so you've seen a couple hazards there. I could imagine, right?
A couple of them and everything else. I was in the department overseeing purchase of the equipment and making sure that what we were buying was sufficient.
Okay. So that all ties into our discussion and with being efficient and being ready, because if you're not ready for any type of calamity or any type of disaster, then that could have a trickling effect. Am I correct?
Yes, it is. In
Okay.
fact, I just attended the FEMA in-service uh,
Okay.
Tuesday and Thursday, and they talked a lot about preparedness also in that session.
Good. Dodge, real quick, what part of the country are you in, sir? Are you in a dry
I
part
live
or a cold
in
part?
Halifax, Pennsylvania, Dauphin County, just 20 miles north of Harrisburg. I've
Okay.
been an EMC since 1981.
So if I'm not mistaken, you're getting some snow there.
We're getting warmer weather. It snow's melting, rain mostly.
Okay.
So it's going away slowly.
Okay. Tanya, do we have anybody that chimed in for any disasters or any type of calamities?
Sure do. We have a theme going here. We have cyber threats and human-made, continued terrorist events, artificial intelligence, human-made again, cyber, AI, infrastructure failure,
Okay.
yep, and security issues and civil unrest. So kind of a theme.
Ashley, they all are interconnected, believe it or not. So good. I love everybody's answers. And I tell you what, at the end of this briefing, you will come out with a better understanding and hopefully better prepared. So emergency today are no longer single events. As you well know, everybody typed in, they cascade. And I'll give you an example. Somebody brought up a fire. Wildfires affect the grid. Grid failures will affect, let's say, the social community. When there's lights out, people tend to, I use the word crazy. They go into looting, they do lawless acts and things of that nature. And then when you have grid failures, guess what happens, Embry-Riddle? Airport disruption. And I know that a lot of students from Embry-Riddle don't want to hear airport disruption because that ties into what we do. We want to make sure airports run seamlessly and safe. And then along with that, communication is lost. And then a lot of other things. So the communities expect us, the Salvation Army, and all the emergency disaster managers to run these operations and to recover seamlessly and to overcome these failures. So that's why having innovation isn't just necessary. Innovation saves time, and time saves lives. So real quick here, if you personally experience any type of disruption, give me a thumbs up. And it could be, the Admiral there is giving me thumbs up. I know there's a lot of disruptions he's seen. Electrical could be one. I'll give you an example. For some people, you see the cell phone? Having a cell phone go down, that is not only a disruption, that is a catastrophe for some people, especially for some generations. I have a 9-year-old niece. Her cell phone goes down. She not only throws a tantrum, but she throws a seismic earthquake. So this goes down, everything goes down. Do you agree or disagree? Give me thumbs up. Disagree? Thumbs up. If the cell phone goes down, thumbs down, right? Because if you're like me, I can live without a cell phone. Most people think Salvation Army is just about feeding, canteens, but we also look at the whole person care. We support emotional, spiritual, and physical matters as much as infrastructure. We also apply our services in the whole community partnership. We coordinate with other agencies such as airports. Airports are very important. We also communicate with universities such as Embry-Riddle Aeronautical. And then we also communicate with government entities like your local sheriffs, social service departments, and educations. We also look at lifelines. Lifelines are the work that stabilizes critical lifelines in the communities, and we focus on food, water, shelter. We also build resiliency, and we do that by creating partnership and trust, confidence with each other. We're moving from reacting after disasters to preventing disasters by building those connections, preparedness, training, building relationships. So those are very important. So I'll pause for a minute here and ask the class, which of these lifelines, if it collapses, would cause a big disaster in your circle, in your community? And just think about it for a moment. Just go ahead and type it in the chat. And Tanya, would you be so kind to read me some of those comments, please?
Of course. Yeah. I don't see them yet, but probably people are typing.
Okay. So if I need to repeat the question, which of the lifelines, and the lifelines could be food, water, shelter, critical infrastructure, electricity, sewage. I will tell you that if I didn't have water, I would be hurting right now. I could go without my cell phone. I can probably even go without my electricity, because then what I'll do is I'll just curl up in a nice book. And if it's at night, I'll just turn on a little candlelight and read my nice book. And so get away from all this drama going on in the world. But definitely you need water. You cannot sustain without water. That's my personal, because water is a life sustaining. It's not only replenishing your body, but it also fights diseases as well. And you can do a lot of things with water. Okay. Good. Technology is transforming emergency management, but it just doesn't deliver technology, but it delivers a way of us having to enable our capacity. An example would be, I can do it alone, but having AI just enhances. When Steve Jobs developed this cell phone, an example would be, he didn't ask the cell phone to replace the human dynamics. He simply said using a cell phone was a way of connecting with each other. Okay, it was a way of connecting with each other, and it was used as a device to just enhance but never replace. Okay, AI won't replace emergency managers, but emergency managers who use AI will replace those who don't. So we use a lot of predictive analysis tools. We can forecast storms and impacts. If you watch news, you see a lot of the news weather reporters who look at predictive analysis with the maps, and they see the weather coming in and they project a couple days out. So those are predictive analysis. We also use things like GIS dashboards. We put we build maps in the GIS, and those maps could be anywhere from housing to the lay of units out there to where populations are at. So we build those maps, the GIS maps as well. And then we also look at AI logistics, artificial intelligent logistics by projecting shelter usage, meal demands, and supplies. And a lot of these things we've started using with Excel spreadsheets, and then the AI would take the information from the Excel spreadsheet and then populate it and give it a better understanding for us, the decision maker, to make those decisions from as well. And lastly, resilience modeling, we think of it as a flight simulator. But again, it's all simulation, but it's not the 100%, but it's always good to have at least some kind of depiction of what's going on. I always said that it's better to have something 70% on time than 100% late. So if you agree with me with that statement, give me a thumbs up. You ever heard that statement? I'd rather be 70% on time than 100% late. Okay, something to think about. If you can invent any futuristic type of tool out there, may it be, well, a drone, what would it be? Go ahead and put that on the chat box. And Tanya, let me know if you have that populated.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a minute for them to show up, but they
Yeah.
they do come. Yeah, people are engaged.
Interesting. So if you had to create a futuristic disaster tool, I would love to know what it is, and then you and I could go in business and we'll buy the proprietary rights there. If you don't have a futuristic tool, what I would like for you to do is type in your location and also tell me how the weather is at your location. So I'm in California right now, in the back end of the Sierra Nevada mountains. We have a lot of snow.
Dennis, we have one from Ashley about prevention mechanisms and mitigation from gouging.
Okay. Do we have enough time to talk about that? Because that sounds like an interesting subject. I've never heard of that. Uh, if you wish, would you like to come off mic and tell us a little bit about it?
Hey, it's Ashley. So I'm actually from New Orleans, and my husband is he's a National Guard retiree from working Hurricane Katrina. And so my dad was actually in emergency management. He worked a lot of contracts. So that's where my background comes in, wanting to get the degree through Embry-Riddle. And I saw so much price gouging that it would be amazing to have a mechanism in place. I think there may be one with the certain acts through the Congress where they maybe have a better hold on it now, but there is so much whenever the communication systems go down and fuel is the number one, fuel and water become the number one commodity, then the individuals who still have that to pump into vehicles become like, oh, we are now going to get you for however much money you have in your pocket, make it $20 a gallon. Unspeakable, unsightly circumstances where victims of storms and natural disasters are taken advantage of. So whatever that looks like to prevent people from if their most vulnerable place from being gouged and being taken advantage of.
That's a good idea. I think the policy is there, Ashley, right? I
Yeah,
think we do.
You can totally call me Ash. That's fine.
I think, yes, I think you're spot on. I think we do have policies in place. You cannot price gouge. Unfortunately, I believe that there is probably lack of systems or oversight. And an example would be, if area of the country or that area of damage is overinflating their price and taking advantage of the disaster victims. I think the hard part is just holding them accountable. And what I would encourage is, continue if you ever volunteer or if you're ever in a disaster or uh, if you're talking to leadership, I think that's one of those things where the community could get involved and report. And then once those things get reported up to the local jurisdiction, that could then be shared with other local jurisdictions and then enforced. So you're spot on that. There's gouging there, and I think that AI could help with that as well. But good point. Thank you very much.
Yeah, one of the things that I just submitted to Patreon, I can't pronounce the name correctly, but they just won the FAA brand new air traffic control system. And so if they, because of the way that they have their new infrastructure coming in through the air traffic control centers, we could somehow integrate patrons to monitor, because a lot of that happens in the major cities where there are air traffic control towers, and there is a lot of communication going through those towers that are on backup generators as the regular system goes down. Those air traffic controllers still have that communication available to them. So I believe if it could be integrated through that, we would have a huge step in the right direction, even if it's just poorly implemented, like you said, with little oversight. I believe a good step would be to involve them in that oversight.
Well, I think you're in a good place to do this. I mean, you have some good, Embry-Riddle probably would assist in helping that project. So I don't know, Professor Tanya, what do you think? Is that a different conversation?
I
Embry-Riddle.
think it's an amazing idea, Ashley, and maybe get in touch with me offline and we can chat more about some ideas for sure. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Wow, I love this. Okay, moving along. Well, let's put this into practice. Imagine in 2030, a hybrid superstorm hits the West Coast or even in near your area. Cyber disruption, communication is degraded, emergency disaster services activated in a fractured information. Here's your task, and just go ahead and write it out. What future tool would be helpful to respond to emergency disaster services? Again, you're going to be faced with big disruption shortly. And the question is, what future ready tool would help EDS, Emergency Disaster Services, respond? Go ahead and type that out. And then the second question is, I got some bullets up here that you can reference from as well on the slide. What partnership or doctrine must evolve between now and, let's say, in 4 years from now, that would help you as an emergency disaster worker? What partnership or doctrine must evolve? Go ahead and type that out. Okay. And Tanya, feel free to pick any of the answers.
Okay, I'm looking in the chat. Maybe they're writing down. Here we go. Joel Billings from my department has a future ready tool, AI and wildfire detection.
Okay. I love that. The wildfire detection. I think you need to come to California for that.
For sure.
Joe, I'll buy you a plane ticket, and when summertime comes, you can help me with that. Great suggestion. Any other tools?
Yeah, I see. Anne-Marie, multi-agency response is always important. The more thorough, the better. And Nate, future ready positioning technologies, not relying on satellites. Some interesting work being done on radio signals. And Sean has possible flooding here from ice jams. The river runs right through that area for him. And then FirstNet, which I have via my phone partnership. And my friend and I are looking to join the local EMCs in the Upper Dauphin area. And Joel just says he likes it in Oklahoma, and also they are in the red flag warning, so it came to mind first. And Olivia Thomas, future ready tool would be GIS real-time information for flooding reports and downed electrical utilities.
Amazing. I love the answers. And it just gives me an opportunity to just refresh my memory, because what you're saying, what everybody's saying is spot on. It's just a reminder that there are other tools out there, and there's no possible way that I can reach in my bag and utilize all those tools. And the reason for that is I'm one person, but when you have a collective group of people, a team that's going in a disaster, we can help each other out and help each other figure out what tools and capabilities are out there. I love the part about working with other agencies. It's not an AI tool. It's not a technology. It's the fact that we're continuing to work with our partners. And even in blue skies, I can't emphasize this enough. You don't have to connect with your local agencies during a disaster. It's always good to try to connect with them before a disaster, especially your local VOADs. And the VOADs are the voluntary organizations active in disaster. So good work. I love everybody's answers on this. It gets me fired up. It gives me meaning to do what I do. Okay. So today I said I was going to bring in a guest, and which I did. Today we are honored to be joined by a leader who understands high operations and emergency disasters better than no one else than Admiral Charles Leidig Jr., also known as Joe. Hey, Joe, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me today.
Good. Is it okay if I just talk a little bit about you and then I'll go ahead and go into questions and answers?
Yeah, sure. Not too much, but
Okay,
so
well,
we'll get to the Q&A.
that's right. So Joe graduated at the Naval Academy, very prestigious school there. I wish I had the opportunity to get accepted there. Unfortunately, I applied, didn't get accepted. So that tells you that they only invite classy, smart people there. He was also the commanding officer for a ship or a submarine called the USS Kavala or Kavala, right?
Kabbalah.
Kavala. And then he also commanded major organizations to include the Submarine Development Group in the Marianas, NATO's Allied Naval Forces of the South, and also served as deputy commander and served twice as the at the Navy Academy, and then also the 80th Commandant. Isn't that right, Joe? You were the 80th Commandant.
Correct. Yep.
And, and then in 2010, you became the deputy commander for the military operations in Africa. And then, which leads me to, you had an interesting role during the 2012 terrorist attack, yeah, in Benghazi. So without further ado, Joe, thank you for showing. So
Dennis,
where you hang your hat nowadays, Admiral?
today I'm in North Carolina. So I down here enjoying the warmer weather. I split time between here and Annapolis. Some of my part-time work requires me to still go to DC, but I enjoy it more down here. The weather's better.
Okay. So I'm going to ask Joe a couple questions, and then if you wish, you guys could type in a couple questions there as well. But I'm going to remind you, just be polite, nothing too political. And don't ask him what his favorite football team is, because he'll tell you. There's only one football team, and that's Navy Academy. All right. So, Joe, real quick here, and I'm gonna throw a hard one at you. Okay, is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah. Let's see here. Looking back, what decisions during the crisis had the greatest long-term impact, and how did you make that call under intense uncertainty? And really, what I was trying to ask you is, there were moments in Benghazi in the crisis. Uh, you can reflect on that as well, or you can also reflect on another disaster or another man-made disaster. So again, the question is, looking back, what decisions during the crisis had the greatest long-term impact, and how did you make that call under intense uncertainty?
Yeah, so Dennis, thanks. Just for a little bit of background, I was the senior officer in the command center for U.S. Africa Command the night that our ambassador in Benghazi was attacked by terrorists and regrettably ultimately died. It became a hugely politically charged event in our nation's history. I'm not here to talk about the political stuff, though I'm not afraid to answer questions about it. It did require me to testify in front of Congress a couple different times to answer questions about our military's response that night. To Dennis, to get to your kind of specific question, I like to think about this crisis in a couple different ways, and then we can go into any part we want. But what was most interesting and something that I learned over my entire military career is that in an emergency or a crisis, the first report is always wrong. And every leader in management crisis has to know that. And the second thing is every initial report in a crisis is always time late. So as a leader, when you find yourself in one of these crises, you have to immediately go, okay, the first report might not be completely wrong, but it's going to be highly inaccurate. And you need to know that in the back of your mind. And the second part is by the time you receive the report, it's time late. So for interest's sake, the night that I received the initial report about the attack in Benghazi, I received it at 10:15 local time at my house. I was already home for the night. The information that I received in that report, when we went and later reconstructed everything, had actually occurred 1 hour and 15 minutes before that. And the report was very simple. There's been a protest at the ambassador's residence. It's been overrun. The ambassador is in a safe room, and everything's okay. Turned out not to be even close to the truth. And then the second part was once you get that information, you have to realize that you're now playing catch up in every disaster and emergency management scenario. And so what you're fighting for is information to get it as close to real time as you can. And so I'll be honest, the biggest decision I made that night when I got the first report, even though it was the ambassador safe in the safe room and everything's okay. And by the way, that's State Department. I was working for the Department of Defense, obviously. I made the decision to activate our command center, and I called in the entire staff of U.S. Africa Command because I simply had this gut feeling from all my experience was this is not what's actually happening there. There's something more going on, and we need to activate and get ready to begin a response. So that decision set us up for being able to do things that night that if I had waited longer, the problem would have got worse.
No. Thank you, Admiral, for sharing that. And kind of makes me reflect about how, you got to have the right people at the right time. And I think that you were the right person in that helm there. I'm going to ask one question, then I'm going to turn it over to the group here. Let's see. We'll talk about technologies, since we're talking about technologies in this segment here. What technology, communication, or mapping intelligence or predictive tools proved to be decisive or helpful during Benghazi crisis? Again, what technologies, communication, or mapping or intelligent tools that you use that helped kind of, with your decision and your situational awareness? And I understand that a lot of these tools here can't be shared, but if you can just share a little bit of the technology and how it helped you make that decision, sir.
Yeah. So again, I think the most important technology focuses on two things in a crisis. One is how do you gather information? There's a very interesting military acronym. It's DIKA, and it says we need to take data, turn it into information, turn the information into knowledge, which is then actionable by a leader in command. And so what you need is a group around you that is continually synthesizing data, information, and knowledge that is presented to the person in charge in order to make decisions. The second thing is you're continually chasing this time gap between reports of information when it happened and how time late it is by the time it gets to leaders, because leaders acting on old information don't always make the best decisions. We also have another great saying in the military is, and a lot of these big incidents get second guessed for years, like Benghazi. Leaders in the crises have to make perfect decisions with only 80% of the information. You can't wait for 100% perfect information. You can't wait for it to be real time. So what was some of the technology that we had in place? And we could talk about it a little bit. We have in the military instantaneous satellite communications almost anywhere. And so one of the keys for me in this incident was to actually get U.S. military personnel into Benghazi who could make real-time reports directly to the leadership team at U.S. Africa Command. And so that takes some time to do, but ultimately we were able to get 3 Special Forces soldiers on a private plane who flew from Tripoli to Benghazi. And once they got on the ground, we now had near perfect information. And that allows leaders to make very good, solid decisions. In between that, you have to find other ways to get information. It turns out that night that we had a drone flying in a different part of the area of responsibility. And so we actually got a drone overhead that can collect imagery, which is awesome. It can collect communication of other people, in some cases, in this case, the terrorists, and it can also serve as a link to enable our communication. So we were using satellite communications, drones overhead, flying people in real time, and then we also had some, I won't use the name, it wouldn't mean anything, but this ability to text each other real time. Now, texting doesn't sound that advanced, but again, when people on the ground, if you can get the capability there with a dedicated satellite link of some sort or a dedicated network that can communicate directly from the scene to the people in charge making decisions, all of a sudden the time gap is shortened, the data to information to knowledge to action gap is shortened, and now you can start to make better and better decisions.
Great. Thanks, Admiral. You brought up 2 points. One was the use of drone. As you well know, in Emergency Disaster Services, we're now using drone. Embry-Riddle has a drone program. So it's nice to see that Emergency Disaster Services have incorporated some of the Department of Defense's techniques and tactics and procedures, and now it's evolving through academia. So we do that. And then text, although it's not as much talked about, I guarantee one of you guys texted somebody within the last 30 minutes. Am I right? Give me a thumbs up if you did. So I know Tanya did, because she was like texting me, "Are you ready to go?" I'm like, "Yes, I am, ma'am." So when everything fails, he goes back to the Sims. Tanya, I know we have a lot of questions for the Admiral, so we'll just take about 2 or 3 questions and we'll keep it brief, because I want to make sure that I get you back to your spaces there. So go ahead and feel free to read me some of those good questions for the Admiral.
All right. If people want to, Dennis, how would you feel about letting people unmute and ask their questions, since y'all can't see the chat?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can do that.
Yeah, let's do that. And I see that Nate already has his hand up, so maybe Nate could go first.
Hey, Nate.
Hey, thank you, sir. I appreciate the time and you taking the chance to answer some questions. I'm curious about when you were discussing the latency between the event occurring in Benghazi and information reaching you. What's your perspective on what's contributing to that latency? I.e., is it reporting procedures? Is it formal command structures that are waiting to aggregate information to send to you? And is there kind of an avenue that you see technology would be able to play there in addressing that?
Hey, Nate, great question. So yeah, you're asking a little bit more about, so let me use this specific event as an example. So the ambassador is on the ground in Benghazi. He works for the State Department. In our particular case, and this happens in a lot of crises, the first report from anybody on the ambassador's team that there's anything wrong goes through State Department channels, another agency. In this case, he made his report to the embassy in Tripoli. That information then was relayed to the State Department Operations Center in Washington, D.C., which then contacted the Pentagon Operations Center to tell them that something was amiss. And then the Pentagon's Operations Center contacted my command center. And then my watch officer called me at my home where I was asleep. So you can see the built-in latency as the initial report is made. That's going to happen in every crisis. There's no way somebody at the scene of a crisis, the first phone call they're going to make is to the leader who is going to make the decision. So that automatically led to about an hour and 15-minute latency, even in somebody as adept at this as the U.S. military. And so then the leader's job is to start to find ways to shorten that reporting. And so what we did is understanding that a report came from on the scene where we don't have anybody to the embassy, we immediately cut in half and immediately went to a military officer that works at the embassy and told him to get linked up with their operations center there. So now any report from the scene to the embassy came right into my command center. And you can see how we would cut the reporting down from an hour and 15 minutes. Now the reporting was probably only at that point, maybe 20, 30 minutes late. And so again, what you're trying to do in the management is you're trying to find a way to quickly get the information as truth from the scene to the leadership team that can make a decision.
Thanks, sir.
Great questions, Nate. Thank you. I mean, I think getting that information, we talked about being 70% on time with as opposed to 100% accurate but late, is getting that good common operating picture and getting that accurate. So thank you very much. Do we have another person that would love to ask a question to the Admiral?
I do have a question, and I have two questions in the chat. One from Ashley. Admiral, where and how did the discernment and feeling of greater impending doom come from?
That's a great question. Well, the military
they're all good questions.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. At that point in my career, I had been a commissioned officer for 32 years, and having had served on a submarine, you can probably see a little bit right here, but right here was my submarine breaking through the ice at the North Pole. And so over the years, I found myself in many, many stressful situations. And there's something that experience does that military officers know very well, and it's the sixth sense. I know of 5 times that when I used to do training for commanding officers of submarines, I would talk about there were 5 individual times when I was in command of my submarine for 3 years where I was sitting in my stateroom. It's like my office on the submarine. And I had this feeling that something wasn't right. And in every case, I walked out to the control room or the operations center. And if I hadn't came there at that moment, there would have been a disaster. And so I don't know where it comes from, but it comes from experience and understanding when the communication isn't just right, or that doesn't sound correct. And you ask these kind of internal questions, it causes you to react. And so that night, telling me that the ambassador's facility had been overrun, but he was in a safe room and everything was okay, that falls in the category of that can't be right. That does not make sense. And I need to start getting my team to respond. If it turns out he really is safe and there isn't anything going on, we didn't lose anything except a couple hours of sleep. And so I think it's experience is the answer to your question, and it develops over time the more that you're involved with these kind of crisis and events.
Yeah,
Great
that's an
question.
interesting question. Yeah. I have another one here from Claire. With information flowing in, how do you know when you are at 80% level where you can make a decision?
Yeah, that's another great question, right? And so I would be cheating if I just said experience again, but no. What you're trying to do is think about desired outcomes, whatever it is in the crisis. Are we trying to rescue the ambassador? If we are, how much information do I need before I can start directing aircraft in that direction or forces in that direction? In this particular instance, one of the interesting things that happened in the Benghazi incident that I think is really interesting, and I'll come back to this 80% a little bit, is the initial report was that the ambassador was in a safe room and was okay. As we started to reduce the time gap of information and get more information flow, the next significant report was the ambassador is missing and we can't find him. And that led a complete paradigm shift from the ambassador's okay, can we get him a little bit of help, to the ambassador's missing, leading to speculation that he had been kidnapped or killed. And so now, immediately, the focus of the crisis resorts to, we need to figure out how to first find where the ambassador is located and how do we effect a rescue. And immediately, the whole thing changes. I will tell you, for that next decision, I didn't need 80% information. I know immediately what forces to alert all across Europe and Africa in order to start to put together a rescue. Now, where do you send them? What do? You need more information to get there. So there are some decisions that are made instantaneously with really completely imperfect information. But when you start to have to make precise decisions, what I refer to as the perfect decisions, now the amount of information you need gets closer and closer to 80. But what we've always learned in the military is you can't wait for it to be 100% because you're never going to make a decision. And so there's a spectrum of information that will be available to allow you to make decision. But the more perfect the decision, a little bit more data and information is needed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good military decision-making process. There's also a course on that. Various organizations, leadership schools teaches decision-making process. So you got to make sure that you balance it to what your criteria is. With that note, this is how I make my decision, and I do it by three values. Is it ethical, moral, and legal? And then those are the three pillars. And then based on that, I look at what the Admiral said. What is your desired outcome? Is your desired outcome to do these things? And with those enabling elements in your decision, are you able to carry on that objective? So again, you're not going to wait for the 100%. You're going to look at what is weighed. Is it legal, ethical, moral? And then what is your desired outcome? So that's decision making in a nutshell. We'll entertain one more question. I'm looking at here, and this is good synergy that we're having here. Am I on point, Tanya? Do we still have one more question?
I think that's all in the chat, but if someone wants to unmute or ask a question, can certainly do that.
Admiral, from a senior chief, you and I have been through a lot of service time, and we have gone through different programs to learn our structure as we went through our grades. Did you look at people surrounding you for idea on what to do, how to accomplish it, and sit down and within reasonable time put a frame project together to complete that project?
Thanks, Senior Chief. Yeah, I mean the team is everything. Even though I was the senior officer, making the ultimate decisions that night. Trust me, in the U.S. military, but I was a 3-star admiral. Below me are people in the command center, and then each we had multiple command centers for different elements of the command, all making decisions. And most of the best decisions I made that night were recommendations from the team. There's a, there was a couple interesting decisions involving moving special forces made by my special operations forces commander. Um, there was a recommendation made by a civilian on my team who happened to have the unique ability to listen to communications being collected by our drone that we got overhead of Benghazi. And he was actually giving me information real time because they had intercepted some of the terrorist phone calls. Without giving away too much classified information, one of the great things that our drones do is they act like cell towers, believe it or not. And so when you get a drone in the area and terrorists are talking on their cell phone's always looking for 5 bars, right? Everybody understands that. And so our drone often says, hey, I'm a cell tower. I got 5 bars. Why don't you connect to me? And then their phone connects and we can listen to their conversation. So we got inside the decision loop of some of the terrorist organizations that night. But most importantly, this civilian I can still remember, he was sitting right behind me on my left shoulder in the command center. He was the first to know in the entire US government that it was a terrorist attack that night because he was listening to them coordinating their efforts live. And so most of the decisions made that night were made by other leaders at lower levels down in the organization. And in many cases, they made decisions and then told me the decision they made so I could just affirm it and be informed. But they're all making, there are people up and down the chain of command all making their best decisions. So yeah, it becomes a very interesting dynamic when you're doing it within a team environment.
Great. Great questions and great dialogue here. I appreciate it. Looks like we're coming up about 10 more minutes till the hour.
Dennis,
Before I,
we do have one more question in the chat if you have time for
okay,
one more.
absolutely.
Okay. Olivia was asking, besides the Benghazi incident, what incident do you feel impacted you the most?
Well, I've had 2 9/11 experiences in my life. The Benghazi incidents was 9/11 in 2012. I also was this is hard to believe that could happen to one person in a lifetime, but I was the senior watch officer in the Pentagon on September 11, 2001, when terrorists attacked our country by flying planes into the Twin Towers and to the Pentagon. And I, again, had that experience of I was far less senior, probably about 7 or 8 years. Well, it was 11 years before. I was a Navy captain at the time, but that experience shaped me forever. 9/11, 2001, and the anniversary every year, right? The 25th anniversary is coming up this September. It's ancient history for many in our country, but I can remember that day like none other because of the impactful decisions. I stood next to the Secretary of Defense and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and listening to conversations with the president and vice president directing the actions of the entire country. And so that incident is the most impactful all my life for sure.
Joe, thanks for sharing that. I forgot that you did some time in downstairs too in the National Military Command Center. So a lot of people don't understand a little bit about the National Military Command Center. It is in the bowels of the Pentagon, just to let you know. And it's the teams, it's the most premier emergency operations center in our country. And just like what the Admiral said, we gain situational awareness and understanding in the world from non-disaster to wars. So anything from, let's say, Deepwater Horizon to hostages in the Congo to Doctors Without Borders, everything goes through that desk. And then that desk then fuses all that information and then it puts out a report to the senior decision makers out there. So Joe was the watch captain. Just to give you a little highlight, there's 5 teams. Am I right, Joe? 5 teams,
Correct.
and then each team is composed of 6 to 9 personnel. And I was one of those team members in Team B. So I was working under a Joe like an O6, could be from the Army, Navy, Air Force, and even a Coast Guard person. Now we have Air Force, so they all share their time there. So good to know. So with that said, Admiral, thank you very much for your for sharing us and bestowing us your experience. And is it okay to say that if anybody would love to reach out to you, you're on LinkedIn? Would you like to say any parting remarks?
Well, yeah, first of all, yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and please, if you're interested in connecting, please do that. And in many cases, if assuming I have the time and we can work it out conveniently, I always love to talk to people I connect on LinkedIn. In addition to my military experience, I also have some real world business experience now, so I'm happy to talk about the military, but I also work with some private equity companies, a couple defense and aerospace companies. And so I stay very up to speed on what's going on in the country strategically and in the defense industry. And if any of those areas are of interest to you, or if I can help in any way with connecting you with someone, please let me know. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Admiral. So, like good things, all good things have to come to an end. But, hopefully, uh, you guys got some good things out of this. And I can't emphasize that disasters will continue to evolve. And as leaders, we must also evolve with them. Case in point, the Admiral gave a great example on how he continues to evolve and learn. But if you've been following me, I've always said you got to lead with a good heart and a clear thought, and you got to have some compassion. So if you have compassion paired with innovation, I think you'll really go a long ways.